Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're with us. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. And if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And one of the most popular ways that our class takes us with them is the telephone listen line, 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. It's up 24/7, and you may take us with you. We'd be delighted if you did. With us today, hour number one, Kyle Harris from Montana. Welcome, Kyle.
Good morning, Vince. Every time I get on the radio with you and hear your laugh, I'm reminded that there was a friend of mine a long time ago, way back in college, and he said, you know, life's a gas and your lead foot is right on the accelerator. And you remind me of that every time I hear it.
Kyle, it's delightful to be broadcasting with you. And I was chuckling as I was starting the broadcast because I was going to say but didn't say, but I'll say it now. Kyle, would it be okay if we complain today?
I just don't want to go against your intro there, you know, where you say no whining. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. We're not going to do that, but let me give you an example. I was at, and I don't mind mentioning names of companies, as long as we are factual, they won't sue us. So I was at Menards, and I was buying a hot water heater, and I needed a stainless steel hot water heater because I didn't want to buy another one. And on the way out, I ordered it online because they don't stock them. And it was a couple-hour trip, maybe 3 or 4 hours, to go out there and to come back and to pick it up after I ordered it. And they had a clearance table, and they had some interesting things on the way out. And one of them was had some hammers. And there was a Fat Max, F-A-T-M-A-X. It's a Stanley type of hammer, and it's a 12-ounce hammer. Now, if you looked at it from maybe 10 feet, you would swear it was an Estwing hammer, which is my very favorite hammer. I've had the same Estwing hammer since the 1970s, and it's still treating me very well. It looks just like that, except it has a black and yellow grip instead of a blue or leather grip. Other than that, it looks very, very similar in shape and design. And it was $7. And I thought, wow, you know, I need to finish the molding in this house, so I have several hundred feet of molding to put up, and this would be perfect for that job. So I've decided that instead of buying the tools after I'm done doing the job, I'll get them before I do the job. That's my new style of... I'm saying something that's dear to your heart, right? Buying the tools
exactly,
after the job. Yep. So it was $7. I thought, this, it feels great. My mom would love to use it too. And so it's got anti-vibration. It's got a lot of great features, and it feels great in the hand. And so I'm reading the label, StanleyTools.com, and Towson, Maryland, made in Taiwan. So this great looking, great feeling, great design hammer, made in design with the name Stanley on it. Now, Stanley used to be a well-known, well-respected American tool company, right? So it's just one thing I'd like to share that, class, just because you're buying a tried and true name may not may not actually, that item may not be manufactured in the country that you thought. Now, it looks great. I'm happy with it, but I really would rather have it be made in the United States with American craftsmanship. But guys like Barry Soetoro have destroyed the American dream. He and some of his ilk, like Hillary and others. So that was just one thing. I was thinking about, I'd like to start with this story. I went into yesterday with Mrs. Finelli. We happened to be in the city, and I went into a large shoe store. It was Shoe Carnival. Large, I mean huge shoe store. And my son thought I needed a pair of sneakers because mine were, worn out. And so he bought me the same ones that I've been wearing. They're New Balance. Last time I bought them, they were $44. He was able to get them reduced for a net with taxes of about $60 or $65 with tax. And I thought, wow, how did they get so expensive? So I went in there to exchange them for, and you go on to eBay and they're the same price. So there's not much you can do. $65 is about where you're going to be if you buy a pair of sneakers. Minimum. So there was a guy standing at the door. He was he appeared to be like a manager type. He had this communications earphone in his ear, and he's watching everybody to make sure that no one snuck out with sneakers. And so I said to him, "Can you help me?" And he said, "How can I help you?" I said, "Well, I was looking at this pair of boots just for curiosity, manufactured by Ariat, and they were work boots, and they say leather upper. What does that mean?" I figured that I'd be asking the expert, right? What does that mean? Leather upper. Do you know he couldn't tell me? He talked all around it, and he said, "No, what you're really talking about is top grain." I said, "I'm not talking about top grain." He said, "Well, you're talking about full leather." I said, "No, I'm not talking about full leather. I'm talking about leather upper." And I said, "Let me show you." So we walked about 10 feet over to the label. I opened the inside of the boot that was on display, and I showed him leather upper. I said, "What does that mean?" He could not answer the question. So maybe this little complaint is that I am seeing pretty much everywhere I go, top to bottom, left to right, salespeople or people who appear to be salespeople that have no business in that image of a salesperson, acting like a knowledgeable person about the products that they sell in that store. Have you seen the same kind of things? I mean, we could talk about hot water heaters, anode rods. It doesn't matter. Electrical plumbing. It doesn't matter. Most of the people who are salespeople have very little information, if any, correct information about what they are selling. Do you see that, or is it just me?
I see that, mostly I will see that at the bigger stores. The huge multi-state, great big, Lowe's, Home Depot, those kind of places, those that they really don't know what in the world they're selling. But I have found that when you go into the smaller stores, even though they're not, some of them might even be, multi-state, type, even countrywide stores, when they're a smaller type store and you see the employees that have been there a long time, man, right. So those guys are really good. Like just for an example, even though Napa's everywhere, this little Napa store that we have here in the town that's closest to me, you go in there and if you can talk to the older guys that have been there for 15 years, 20 years, that kind of thing, they must treat them well, and they're usually ex-mechanics, and they know exactly what they're talking about, and they can really point you in a good direction, But the new employees, they don't know split beans from coffee, and so that's, I think it's like you and I were talking the other day, and I've really come to this conclusion because whatever happens on a small scale usually is an indication of something that is going on in a much, much larger scale than we can understand or put our hands on it. We all know that something's wrong. When you get a salesperson that don't know anything, that all they're there to do is to get a receipt from you and get your cash and get you out the door, is pretty much all they're there for. But if we think about that a little bit and kind of project it larger and larger and larger, I think we end up with a situation where what we're trying to create here is a sale to create some kind of a debt to be able to leverage something to end up keeping this fiat money system that's running the entire globe afloat. And I know it sounds like a stretch, but if a person can put their mind and from that little bitty area and then think in terms of you're not dealing with someone that has any major accomplishments. They're not really founded on anything. They don't really know anything about the product that they're dealing with. But if they end up getting your money, they've accomplished their goal. And I think that's where we end up on a large scale. If you take the country as a whole, if they can end up getting our money, keeping it in the banks, which, where nobody can touch it other than the bankers, and they can leverage the entire world economy with that, even though we're not supposed to know anything about how the money works or where it's supposed to go or how it's supposed to work, then they've accomplished their goal.
I totally agree with you. I've placed several calls. When I wanted to buy a replacement hot water heater, we had a lifetime guarantee hot water heater from Lowe's made by Whirlpool, and Whirlpool doesn't make them anymore, and Lowe's doesn't sell them anymore, and there's no replacement for the lifetime hot water heater. So originally when I thought that I would never have to buy another hot water heater, I might have to replace it with another one that Lowe's would give me in exchange. Well, Lowe's doesn't do that anymore because they don't honor their warranty. They don't have a lifetime replacement, so they dropped that product. So the trust that I had in Lowe's has evaporated because, if I had any in Lowe's, has evaporated because they left me high and dry. And I placed several calls to companies selling the Westinghouse stainless steel lifetime 80-gallon hot water heater. I'll tell you what happened when we come back. Kyle Harris is with us live. He's in Montana. We'll be right back. So, class, I needed to replace this hot water heater that was leaking the lifetime warranty Whirlpool, which is no longer offered. Whirlpool doesn't manufacture them. And they've been, Whirlpool hot water heaters have been consumed by the A.O. Smith Company. I talked to customer service, and they said, we don't make them anymore. We make a 6 and a 12-year hot water heater, and they're the same. The only difference is the warranty and the color or the label, but they are the same hot water heater. So I decided that I'd find an alternative. I wasn't going to patronize Whirlpool anymore because they stuck it to us, and Lowe's stuck it to us. So I found this Westinghouse model, and it's all stainless steel. The tank is stainless steel. It's impressive. And it does not have an anode rod because it does not need one because it's stainless steel. Well, sounded like the right way to go. But this $500 hot water heater in 80 gallons that I bought originally about 11 years ago has turned into an $1,100 hot water heater. Well, I decided to bite the bullet, and it was painful spending that much money, but I ordered it. But before I did, I called Home Depot because they offer it. Menards offers it. So I called Home Depot, and I wanted to talk to someone in the hot water heater department rather than traveling from store to store to store to see what they thought of it. And I talked to the employees in the hot water heater department, and no one had seen one. They offered on their website, but no employee had seen the Westinghouse lifetime warranty hot water heater. Can you imagine that? No. So here we have stores selling products that the employees have never seen. The employees could not discuss it with me because they didn't know anything about it. They've never touched one or seen one. Can you imagine that, Kyle? So here we have not only employees that don't know about the products, we have employees that have never seen the products.
Wow. That goes right back to what some of the things John was talking about, this just-in-time delivery, but this goes beyond that, Vince. I mean, it's never delivery. I mean, unless you see it out there in the ether somewhere and decide you want it and buy it, there's no place to put it on the floor, and they're not these stores are so profit-driven that they're definitely not going to stock something, $1,100 hot water heater, to take up that. You think it probably takes up a 3.5 by 3.5 foot space on their floor, and they're not going to even stock one. That's amazing.
That's exactly right. Now, I have not opened the crate. The crate is in our hallway. It took 3 people to carry this off the back of the truck. It is extremely heavy, and it's much taller than the Whirlpool hot water heater. And here's the problem, class. If you buy something like I did, and I was duped by Whirlpool and Lowe's. Well, I now have this problem. We have a tall basement ceiling, and it's going to take 3 or 4 people to carry this hot water heater down the stairs into the basement to install it. And now I have the thought, well, I'll tell you what, maybe we won't install it in the basement. Maybe we'll install it in the garage on the first level. That requires a lot of plumbing. Now, how much plumbing would that be? Easily $1,500 if I hired somebody to do it, just to change the location of the hot water heater. Maybe $2,000 in today's prices. That's without the hot water heater. That's just to change the location. And what happens is people are finding out that the new hot water heaters are different sizes and shapes physically from the old hot water heater. So they may not have a place to replace their hot water heater. So the new one may not fit where the old one did. Why? Because Barry and the Bandits have changed a product that has been around for 100 years. A hot water heater, or almost 100 years. And standard dimensions. Brand versus brand, similar sizes and shapes. That's no longer exactly the case. So now it's really expensive to change hot water heaters. So the labor is more probably than many of the hot water heaters. Average hot water heater replacement cost will cost you about $1,000 in the United States right now to replace a 40-gallon hot water heater by a plumber. Because sometimes it takes 2 guys to do it. So instead of just one truck with one guy in a hand truck, it takes 2 guys. Because they're different shapes. And you've got to, muscle them in through narrower doorways than the new hot water heaters will allow. It's annoying. It really is. Kyle, think about some of the things that are bothering you. I've got plenty of things that are bothering me, starting with the Chevrolet rusting brake lines in their pickup trucks. We'll be right back. Kyle Harris is with us. Kyle, we could say that we're not whining, and I don't think we're whining, but I think these are warnings. We are warning the buyers to beware. And so I was underneath we have a lift here at the farm, and I was under the Chevy pickup truck, a 2004. I bought it seems like I buy vehicles for $3,000. So I bought this old pickup truck for $3,000, and it looks really nice. It's white, and it's a work truck. It's nothing fancy, crank up windows and so forth. And so I got under it after owning it over a year, and I'm checking it out again. And I notice that the brake lines are a little rusty. Actually, they're really rusty. So I go to replace the brake lines. What a job that is. And because you either have to, they recommend that you take the gas tank out if you're under it. And if you don't have a lift, that's really hard to do. Or you take the pickup bed off. And what a pain that is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how much does it cost? Well, the whole brake line, you can get everything you need for like $25 if you have a flaring tool. Well, so these lines are rusting. And the last thing I want to do is have to slam on the brake, have the brake line pop, have no brakes, in one of the circuits, either front or rear, and have a collision. So I'm replacing the brake lines before they fail, but they're rusted. Now, why is it that they're rusted? Well, Chevrolet, I did some research. Chevrolet avoided hundreds of millions of dollars in recalls for these rusty brake lines. So it's not just Vin Finelli's old truck that's rusted, 2004. It's a lot of them. And what else rusts? The fender wells rust. What else rusts? The rocker panels rust. So here we have what I would say is a defect in manufacturing and engineering. They could have avoided this with a little more plating. We have older Mercedes vehicles that don't have this rust. We've had older Volvos that don't have this rust. Other vehicles don't have it, but Chevrolet in their infinite wisdom, decided to cheapen the process of manufacturing so they rust. Now, is that the only problem? Well, let me just say what that costs. It costs about $1,000 to replace the brake lines. $1,000. Now,
Wow.
the parts, if you were, Kyle, I'm sure you've worked on brake lines. It's no big deal.
Oh,
Steel
yeah.
brake lines, right?
Yeah.
You can buy 25 feet of brake line for $20. So for $100, you could buy everything. If you have a tubing bender, you could do it yourself. But typically, $1,000 minimum, up to $2,000 at the dealership to replace the brake lines.
Wow.
It's not necessary.
You and I both, and everybody has to recognize if you're into survival or being a survivalist of any kind, you're going to have to get your mind wrapped around this new reality. And the new reality is we've got garbage to work with. And so how are we going to overcome the way that they have produced these garbage things, the garbage, whatever it is, brake lines, water heaters, all of these different things? How are we going to adapt in such a way that you can fix it yourself, save yourself a ton of money, because money's, scarcer than hen's teeth, and still be able to run your farm and to have life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so It's like doing wiring on things. I've seen pickups with new wiring where the wiring comes out of the harness and it's totally exposed underneath, going up to the brake lights in the back. I mean, from underneath the truck, you're looking at this. And I thought to myself, how crazy is that? And so I went in there and I took some large rubber hose, and I went over the top of the wire where it came out of the wiring harness. I went over the top of those wires and split this thin hose and went all the way over the wires, come up to within about 6 or 8 inches of where they actually attached to the lights. Well, wasn't really having a problem at that time, but I could see a potential problem. And
Sure.
I think we need to recognize those kind of things. It's just a matter of being able to, when you see it, think of what's fixing to happen. You've got salt on the roads now that's going to corrode and eat up things, and so how is that going to affect what I'm looking at from underneath this vehicle? What kind of stuff is that going to affect, and how can I avoid it?
All right, let's take that to another connect another dot. So I'm under the vehicle and I'm thinking, boy, this is really hard to get to all the places I need to run this brake line. Let me just unwinch the spare tire under the bed, and what you have is this winch, and you put in the tire changing tool and you rotate it, and it lowers the spare tire. Spare tire comes down about 4 or 5 inches and locks in place. Why? Because they didn't plate the safety mechanism for the spare tire carrier. So what happens is, if the winch were to get loose, that has this cable that holds the spare tire up tight against the bottom of the bed in the frame, it has a safety mechanism to prevent the spare tire from falling off and the guy behind you running into your spare tire. Well, what happens is it rusts and you can't get the spare tire off. Am I kidding? Absolutely not. You can go to YouTube and you can see all kinds of guys having the same problem. They can't get their spare tire off. So that's another problem. And while I was under there, I thought, wow, look at this differential cover. This is the rear axle. In the center of the rear axle, there is a differential, gears in there, and there's a cover. And the darn thing is rusted. Now, I'm not talking about surface rust. I'm talking about deep pitted rust. And I was going to see one of our instructors who lives a couple states away, and I've got some batteries for him. We bought some, and we're doing a solar project together, and I have his batteries, and I'm going to bring them to him. And so I'm looking at this differential cover thinking, this thing's going to pit through. The differential fluid's going to leak out, and I am going to destroy the differential and rear axle gears on my pickup truck. So I went to buy another one at a salvage yard. The guy brings one out, and he goes, okay, this one will fit. And I'll go, that's as bad as the one I've got. So it's not just it's not just mine. Okay? So I finally, he found one that was better, and I sanded the rust off that one, and I painted it with Rust-Oleum, so it's got, a nice preventative rust covering on the replacement differential. But how much did it cost? $25, which is probably a good deal. But how much would it cost to have a mechanic change the differential cover and paint it and spend the 3 hours that I'm spending on it? Way too much money. Way too much. And why? Because they didn't paint it well enough at the factory at General Motors. So what I'm saying is shoddy workmanship, shoddy engineering. And I think, Kyle, the engineers at General Motors hate the mechanics that work on their vehicles. I think there's a war going on, and the engineers are winning. They are making it impossible to easily fix vehicles today.
Oh, I totally agree with that, because I've been a service manager for, actually, it's all of them. I remember one time, Vince, this is a funny story. I walked into a mechanic shop who was a friend of mine, and he's underneath this Ford Explorer, and he is beating on something with a sledgehammer. And you can hear him, bam! I mean, it's just, ricocheting that sound all over his shop, and it's horrendously loud. And I go up to him and I said, "Hi, Jeff, and how you doing?" And he comes up and he says, "Bam!" He says, "Do you know what I'm gonna bam call success? Bam!" And I said, "No, what's that?" And he said, "It's gonna be bam when I tell everybody that walks through that door I ain't working on nothing but General Motors." Bam! It was so funny.
I thought you were going to say he was. I thought you were going to say he was changing the oil filter.
Oh, it was a front end part that had been rusted, but Ford is bad and Chrysler is bad. They're all that way, All we can really do is see these potential things, just like you said there. How many people even think in terms of those kind of things? Is it going to pit and rust on me, and how bad could it be? And actually, even is it bad enough right at this point where I could drop that differential off, hit it with a wire brush on a grinder, and clean it all up, prime it, and paint it myself, and then save it, But anyway, it's one of I think anything pretty much past the 1995, in my opinion, has went the workmanship in different areas, not in every area, but in different areas. Since 1995, a lot of this planned obsolescence has really worked its way into the automotive industry to the point to where, like you said, the mechanics, they can work on them, but boy, oh boy, it's almost like you got to be a magician and a contortionist just to be able to get to some of these things.
I was talking to our daughter, and she called me and she said, "Hey, Dad, my refrigerator freezer side by side failed," and she had either a Whirlpool or a General Electric or one of those, and it was the kind of thing where everything was defrosting, and so I said, "Well, all you do is put a hard start kit in it, and here's how you do it, and I'll send you an email with the part, and you can do that." And so she decided that she was going to buy a new refrigerator freezer side by side, so, which was a real challenge, because she went to the big box stores, Home Depot and the others, and they've got them on display, but you can't buy one. You can't take one with you, except unless you want one of them that has been damaged, in their poor handling of it, and they ding them up. So you can get a scratch and dent model. They've got them for sale, maybe one of each, or they've got some that customers have bought and said, "This is crappy, I don't want it," and they bring it back and get their money back, and then they go to sell that as a previously purchased appliance. So she had no choice in her mind, but she went to Home Depot and she bought a Samsung refrigerator side by side. She gets it home and she realizes that it does not have the center drawer in this side by side refrigerator for deli meats. Now, never have I seen a refrigerator in modern times that did not have a center drawer, for, let's say, if you buy deli meats or cheese and that kind of thing, you put it in the center drawer, right? You have the vegetable crispers at the bottom and you have a drawer in the center. Well, not the Samsung. Nope. You can get one. It's an option, and you can order it. And I don't know how much it costs. It's probably 10% of the cost of the unit, the refrigerator freezer. But let me tell you the rest of the story when we come back. Plus, I'm working on solar power, solar batteries, those kinds of things. And if you'd like to learn more about some of the experiences I've had, send me an email, Vincent@usaprepares.com. If you're interested in what I've learned and what I found out, maybe we can talk more about that in future broadcasts. Things that I think are worth looking at, technologies that I think work really well. So Vincent@usaprepares.com. Kyle Harris is with us. Kyle, so our daughter bought this Samsung side-by-side French door type refrigerator. So it's got freezer on the left, refrigerator on the right. And so here's what happens. If you close the refrigerator door, the freezer door pops open. It just pops open a half an inch. And you can't really see it because it's just open a half an inch. It's one of these stainless steel skin things. She got it for like $700 and something because it was half price because someone either banged it up or something happened to it. And it's got some dings and dents in it, but it's worth $700 to her to have those dings and dents rather than spend $1,500. This thing is a piece of engineering that has enabled them to take material out of the refrigerator. It's lightweight. They've taken the center drawer out for the deli type meats. If you use a center drawer, we do, but not for deli meats so much, but for cheese and things. And the freezer door is very, very lightweight. It is so lightweight that the air pressure of just closing the refrigerator door pops the freezer door open. And so that would cause if you do that overnight, if you get a late night snack, close the refrigerator door, pop the freezer door open. Now you have a door open a half an inch, and you're going to cause the energy consumption to go up, and you're going to lose the cooling in the freezer side. So I happened to call Samsung. I was outraged by this, and I called them up, and they said, that's normal. That's normal. When you close the refrigerator door, the freezer door will pop open. Yes, that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's engineered. Yes, that is correct. And I was annoyed. I was annoyed that this woman had the gall to try to treat me to that much baloney. Okay? And I told her, I said, you're wasting my time and your time. I'm not buying these lies. I said, I asked her if she had a French door in her house, and she said she did. And I said, so when you close one French door, does the other one pop open? And she said, no. I said, okay. Well, so she's reading this script. So Samsung, and here's what happened, Kyle, I believe. They took so much weight out of the freezer door that it's very lightweight. And if you're within 4 inches of having the refrigerator side of the door closed, and you just release it with your fingers, and it slowly closes, that is enough air pressure. Just releasing the refrigerator door. I'm not saying give it a shove. I'm just saying leave it stationary, let go 4 inches from fully closed. It will close itself and pop open the freezer door. They have taken so much mass out of the freezer door that it's easily to blow it open with just the pressure of the refrigerator door closing by itself. That's what they're doing.
I'll tell you, the scary thing, Vince, is that 99% of the people, once they got to the point of calling Samsung, if they even got that far, and they told them it was normal, they would buy it. They would just take it.
Correct. And here's how Samsung can prove it. Samsung can say, tell you what, you bought this at Home Depot. Here's what you do. You go to Home Depot right now, and you go and try any one of those refrigerator freezers and see if it's not normal. And you'll find out that unless you go to the General Electric model, all the Asian ones, I was kicking the doors. I mean, figuratively. I'm sorry, kicking the tires, I should say. Looking at them, opening and closing the doors gently, being a nice customer. They all do it except for the General Electric that they had on display. All of these Asian refrigerators, you open the refrigerator door and you release it slowly, and it will pop open the freezer door. Try it. Class, go to your local Home Depot and tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. You won't believe it. You're going to be aghast. And then you go to the salesperson and you say, look at this. This is unbelievable. They probably go, oh, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and that's the way you delude an entire society.
Not us. Hey, we're not, Kyle, you and I aren't buying this. Yeah, yeah. What a horrible thought that is. Oh, man. Hey, Kyle, thank you so much for your friendship and being with us here today. And complaining a little bit about things that are warning customers what they should know. Thanks so much. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. I'm delighted to be broadcasting this hour with Bert Bertonis. He's in California. He's a radio frequency engineer. He has been experiencing radio frequency designs and engineering them and developing them since the mid-1970s. He's got a bachelor's of science in electrical engineering, and he's got his MBA. Welcome, Bert.
Good to be here, Vince. It's been a while since I was last on.
Yeah. The reason that Bert's on with us today is I was reading an article about wireless chargers, charging devices like cell phones, iPads, those types of devices without wires. Now, how complicated is it to charge your device? Well, you have one of these little solid-state devices. You plug it into your wall outlet. You plug in your USB cable into that, and then you plug that short cable into your device. And, within a short time, your device is charged. It can be a PC. It can be an iPad, a tablet, a Surface device. And how hard is that? Not too hard. Well, I read this article from the internet about how Disney is really interested in exploring wireless charging and removing that pesky cord. That how difficult it must be to plug in this cord so you can charge this device wirelessly through the air. How important is that? Well, I'm concerned about the dangers of that, so I called a USA Prepares instructor, Bert Bertonis, about this, and that's what we're going to talk about this hour. Bert, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, the Disney system uses magnetics. So let me back up and say there's 3 or 4 different methods that are being talked about, some being tested for how to wirelessly charge your cell phones and other PDAs, other electronic devices. So there's magnetic, there's radio frequency, and believe it or not, there's ultrasonic audio. And the magnetics, let's divide up to near field and far field. So the Disney system is designed to embed the whole room in a high-power magnetic field. And I know that doesn't sound too appealing, and to be honest with you, we don't know what the potential dangers are. Now, near-field magnetics, that's sort of getting its legs, and you see it more and more going into coffee shops. That's when you just put your phone down on a pad, and it magnetically couples to it. That's actually probably not so dangerous. And if they can get a standard in place, probably not so bad an idea. But the far field systems, I think they're all with different dangers. And let me back up again and say, you have to think in terms of the scale of the power. A cell phone transmits a maximum of 600 milliwatts. So in maximum power mode, let's say with everything else it has to do, it's burning up to a watt of power. Now, how do you get a device that loses probably 90 to 99% of its power through the air, so only 1 to 5 or 10% at best would ever get to the phone? How do you generate enough power to get that amount of coupled power into your phone? You need to actually have hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of watts being transmitted. So the bottom line is, the very simple look at it, that anybody can just say, this is out of scale. That's correct. It's out of scale. The reality is it can't really be done safely and legally, yet many companies are working on it.
And Bert, I've got to ask you, what is the attraction of wireless charging? Do you have a handle on why someone would say, I could just put my phone, if you're talking about the magnetic type, all I have to do is put my phone on this pad versus putting my phone down right where the pad would be and just plug in this cable. What's so hard about plugging in the cable?
I think nothing. But the idea is you wouldn't have to plug your phone in. You could just be walking around. It would charge out of the air. It sort of reminds me, years ago, we had something in California called the breatharian movement. And the idea was these people claimed that they didn't have to eat food. They could get all their nourishment out of the air. And there was actually a movement, and they claimed, oh, yeah, we just don't eat food. And finally, one of the TV stations followed the guy around and caught him going into McDonald's and coming out with a pack of hamburgers. But it's the same kind of idea. But, I mean, I can tell you from somebody who's worked in wireless his entire career, the math just isn't there. We're not talking about being off by half or 4 times or even 10 times. We're off by hundreds or thousands of times in terms of what you would have to generate in the field to couple energy into your phone and have it effectively charge.
All right. Well, let's just talk about wireless charging without the magnetics. Let's talk about the RF, radio frequency charging. So let's say there are proposed systems that are suggesting that this can be done, and they're on the stock market right now. I believe you can buy stock in at least one of these companies, and I'm not going to mention their name because I don't want people to say, "Wow, this is great, I'm going to buy stock," because I think it's a really bad idea. But Bert, so you've been to our house. Now, if we were in the living room, for example, and we have a typical living room class, and let's say I were on the phone, if I had one of these cell phones and if I had one of these wireless chargers, and I walked around the living room, this device would have to be focused toward the phone, right? It would have to say, I know where the phone is, I'll track that phone, and I'll have to have an antenna that can either electronically find the phone and aim that pattern, that transmission pattern toward the phone as I pace around, which I do, and it would have to attack me with these radio frequencies while it's really trying to find the phone, which is very close to my head, right? Isn't that how that would work? It would track me?
Well, that's correct. Because the power is so far off in terms of getting enough into the phone, these companies are working on beamforming antennas that'll concentrate more of the power where the phone is, which, could be right in your pocket, meaning, yes, it's pointing it right at you. So let's say maybe that takes it from being off by 1,000 to being off by only 100 in terms of the amount of power you need. But yes, it in a perverse way, it makes it even more dangerous. The FCC in the unlicensed bands only allows 1 watt of power with a 6 dB antenna gain. So I don't want to get too technical, but that's like 4 watts of radiated power. But the amount that would get coupled into any phone with an omni antenna is about 1/10,000th of that, or less. So you work on focused antennas. But even then, still not enough power. And there's another caveat. Those power limits are based on sending information. A lot of people forget these bands were sent up in order to transmit data, to transmit information. If you're just transmitting a CW signal, just a straight signal, the power level is even less. It's approximately 1 milliwatt. So none of these systems are safe. None of these systems can get approved under current FCC regulations. And in the fine print, when you talk to one of these companies, they'll admit, well, we're working on getting the FCC to modify the rules to approve them. But in my opinion, that's never going to happen because health groups, different lobbying groups would make sure that the public would be protected, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. When you're talking about beam-forming antennas, what came to my mind was when I was a child and I learned about magnifying glasses and the sun, 93 million miles away from Earth is the sun, and light reaches the Earth from the sun. And I could take, in that very weak light, I could take a magnifying glass and I could burn a hole in a leaf by concentrating that light energy from the sun to the point where it would set a leaf on fire. If I could focus like a 4-inch magnifying glass or a 3-inch magnifying glass into like a pinpoint of light, focus all that energy. Now, we're talking about doing something analogous to that. Is that not correct?
Well, that's correct, but if you actually look at the FCC rules, if you use any more than 6 dB antenna gain, you have to back your power down. So let's say they have 20 dB antenna gain, then they would have to back the power down significantly, and it actually defeats the purpose. But again, the companies are demonstrating the products assuming that, well, we'll get the FCC to approve this somehow. I don't know how, but that's their official line. If you actually look at the rules, there's just nothing close to a provision that would allow for wireless charging anywhere in the FCC Part 15, which is the section for unlicensed devices.
Isn't the FCC interested in communications of information rather than communication of information as compared with transmission of raw power? Are they not? Is the FCC not in the business of licensing the transmission of raw power?
Well, that's correct. They're not. But I will say they are in the business of protecting both people and the radio waves. And an example of that is any transmitter basically transmits the signal you want plus a lot of spurious emissions. There's harmonics, there's interference that's generated. So they're also in the business of making sure with regulations that when you transmit a signal at, let's say, 102 megahertz FM transmitter, it doesn't go into other bands and other frequencies.
When we come back, Bert Bertonis, I'd like to read an article on CNET.com, and it's about it says Disney develops room with ubiquitous wireless charging. Researchers have built a prototype room that will allow multiple devices to be charged wirelessly while in the room. I'd like to read that article and get your take on it. We'll be right back. Bert Bertonis is with us, and we're talking about wireless charging of electrical devices or electronic devices. And there's an article on CNET. I'll post it at USA Prepares. Disney develops room with ubiquitous charging. And the article goes on to say, Disney research is taking wireless charging to a whole new level. The scientific and tech arm of the entertainment giant has built a prototype room with ubiquitous wireless power delivery that allows several devices to be charged wirelessly in much the way we get internet access through Wi-Fi. By tapping quasi-static cavity resonance, researchers have discovered they could generate magnetic fields inside specifically built structures to deliver kilowatts of power to mobile devices inside that structure. This new innovative method will make it possible for electric power to become as ubiquitous as Wi-Fi. And this, in turn, could enable new applications for robots and small mobile devices by eliminating the need to replace batteries and wires for charging. I'd like to talk about that part. Historically, mobile device owners have been forced to plug their products into a charger to refresh a battery. Wireless charging, however, ditches the cord and allows users to simply rest their device atop a charging pad to add juice. When juice means electricity. Disney's approach eliminates the need to be on that pad. All you have to do is be in the room and your device will start charging automatically. And depending on where you are in the room, delivery efficiency can be as high as 95%, researchers said. There is one potential issue. You have to not mind being in a room constructed of mostly aluminum. That includes walls, ceiling, and floor. And there's a copper pole in the middle of the room and 15 18 discrete high-quality factor capacitors that separate the magnetic field from the electric field. No word on when you can expect one of these metal boxes for your home. That's pretty much the article. Bert, your comments?
Vince, have you seen a picture of the room?
I have not seen a picture of the room.
It looks something out of Star Trek. It reminds me of the transporter, if you remember that.
Yes.
Boy, I don't want to be the first person to go in that room with kilowatts of magnetic energy being dissipated. It may turn out to be safe, but boy, when you talk about kilowatts of magnetic energy, it's just hard to believe. I think there's a lot of research that's going to have to be done on the effects on biological entities.
Okay, let's talk about what a kilowatt of power is. Now, a kilowatt is 1,000 watts of power for an hour. The old-fashioned incandescent light bulb, you could light up 10 of them for an hour with 1 kilowatt of electricity. And 746 watts equals 1 horsepower. Now, after the broadcast, we're going to be rototilling our garden with a couple horsepower rototiller. And if you all know, if you've tilled a garden, you know how much work it is to turn over that dirt. Well, a few horsepower, like 3 horsepower, is about roughly 2 kilowatts, right? Actually, that's a little more than 3 horsepower, just a little bit more than 2 kilowatts. But what I'm saying is a kilowatt of power is a significant amount. And if you're going to be in a room where that's ricocheting around, that can't be all that healthy, in my mind. That's my opinion.
Sure. And, Vince, on a previous show, we talked about cell phone safety. And a cell phone can transmit up to 600 milliwatts, so that's 0.6 of a watt output. And holding that up to your brain is probably not a safe thing. And there have been, the more recent studies do show a link between both cancer and other health effects in heavy use of cell phones. But, there we're talking about a watt. Here we're talking about thousands of watts. So, again, it's just the back of the envelope tells you it's probably not safe. It's definitely not legal through the FCC rules. Yet, because of the attractiveness, you have all these companies developing products, selling stock, and as you mentioned, one of them is even public.
Yeah, when we come back, Bert, let's talk about that little study that you did. You climbed on top of a mountain and you measured microwave radiation years ago in Silicon Valley. Let's talk about what you found out with that study that you did. We'll be right back. Class, Bert Bertonis is with us. He's a radio frequency engineer, lots and lots of experience. He's a professional in that industry, patent holder, and he's been in Silicon Valley for a very, very long time, decades. And so he knows a lot of the movers and shakers, and we're talking about the dangers of microwave radiation and wireless charging. Bert, before we go into the story about you measuring microwave radiation in the valley of Silicon Valley, I'd like to share with you, I have a good friend, a very dear friend, a nice guy, and he was in the Vietnam conflict, which ended around 1975. So probably a couple of years older than I. And when he was single during this Vietnam conflict, he was in radio communications. His job was communications. And when he was going on leave, before he went on leave, he would go sit on the feed horn of a satellite communications antenna to scramble his potential for reproduction. So he would literally sit on the feed horn of a satellite antenna, use the microwave energy to scramble his sperm. So that, now I'm serious. It's like an open-air microwave oven, and that's what he did before he went into town. Now, he knew as a young man, a single young man, that the microwaves had that effect. So, that being said, do you have any comments on that before we continue?
No. Boy, I'd be concerned about the genetic effects. So,
sure, absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know if he has children or had children or not. I don't know that. But let's go into the next part of this. So my understanding from chatting with you many, many years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you went up to the top of a mountain in Silicon Valley in 1980s, I believe, and you wanted to measure the microwave radiation. Tell us that story, please.
Well, we were developing a product that used the 2.4 gigahertz band to transmit wireless internet. So that's one of the major license-free bands. We had a startup company, team of engineers. We had been developing the product. It tested in the lab. It was good. We were ready to finally go up to the mountaintop, broadcast it down into Silicon Valley, and test the actual real-world performance of the product. So we got all our gear and our prototypes. We had people down below. We went up to the radio tower, assembled our equipment, started testing it, and at first it was working pretty well. We had it hooked up by mid-morning. Then around 11:30, we noticed performance started going down, and by noon, it pretty much stopped working, and we couldn't figure it out. We're testing everything. So we look at the spectrum analyzer, and we see the noise floor has gone up 10 to 20 dB. And the noise floor across all of Silicon Valley went up by 10 or 20 dB. And at first we're scratching our heads. Is the HP spectrum analyzer flaking out? What's going on? And finally, it hit us. What's going on? Everybody was eating lunch, and they were turning on their microwave ovens. And microwave ovens actually are in the same exact frequency band. The microwave tube that's in it is centered at 2450 megahertz, 2.45 gigahertz, and it was raising the noise floor, and it pretty much made our product, not so usable because of that. Now, today, if you go up there and do the same test, something else happens because there's so much prolific Wi-Fi that the noise floor is up 20 dB just because of the Wi-Fi, so you don't even see the effect of the microwave oven anymore. But 15 years ago, you could, and it was pretty startling that there was that much energy, that the whole noise floor in the 2.4 gigahertz frequency band increased by 10 to 100 times during lunchtime, and also, of course, during dinner.
Bert, would you give us a quick thumbnail education of, you mentioned dB as in decibel. What is an increase of 10 dB, please? What does that mean in layman's terms?
Every 10 dB is 10 times. So 20 dB would be 100 times, 30 dB would be 1,000 times. And that's pretty much based on the fact that radio waves and cosmic energy is logarithmic. So your actual signal that you would pick up in a radio receiver can vary by huge amounts, by, actually almost hundreds of thousands times your strongest signal to your weakest signal. So the only way to get your handle around those kind of numbers is to use a log system.
So if I've got this right, a 10 dB, 10 decibel increase is 10 times. A 20 decibel increase is 100 times more.
Yes.
And a 30 decibel increase is 1,000 times more. Okay, so now, as you described this, you were saying that you had a product that would transmit wireless internet. Is that correct?
Yes. That was our product. So we ended up, actually, just a side note, it did become successful. We adapted it for a different application, which was to sell to cable companies to hop their wireless internet signal. Cable companies use DOCSIS, and we actually created a version of the product that would allow them to send DOCSIS wirelessly where they didn't have cable run. So it ultimately became a successful product, but it was not useful for broadcasting internet to the masses over the unlicensed frequency band.
And the reason, as I understand from what you said, is the fact that cell phones became more prolific, although you didn't say that. The cell phone
Wi-Fi.
Transmissions is... Okay, but
Wi-Fi.
I mean, what was interfering... Okay, I'm sorry. Wi-Fi prevented the use of Wi-Fi prevented this product from being implemented as you designed it. So more and more microwaves were being used to what would you say, increase the noise level, right?
Well, between the microwave ovens and now Wi-Fi, the 2.4 frequency band really can't be used for anything long distance now. The other thing we did is we moved to the 5 gigahertz license-free band, although that is now becoming fairly congested with Wi-Fi as well. So as we work on new technology, generally through the 100-year history of wireless, you see engineers and developers moving to higher and higher frequencies to get out of congestion. Also, what's favorable about higher frequencies is there's more bandwidth because the actual spectrum is logarithmic as well. So when you get into the higher frequencies, you actually contain, a 1% bandwidth becomes a lot more megahertz and you can send more data. So they're harder to work with in terms of the technology, but you can send more and more data as you go higher and higher in frequency.
So let me see if I've got this right, Bert. Were you saying that the microwave ovens themselves were part of the problem? And if that's the case, that's because they must leak. Is that correct?
Well, they leak very little, but in aggregate, it turned out to be substantial and very visible.
Okay. So a whole bunch of microwave...
Hundreds of thousands of microwaves.
Each leaking a little bit causes a big problem that's measurable that would disrupt the communications. Now,
that's exactly right.
In itself, Bert, is that a problem in Silicon Valley with all of these microwaves? It sounds to me like 24 hours a day almost, or at least most of the daylight hours in Silicon Valley, microwaves are leaking to the point where you could not make this technology work, but people are bathing in this microwave energy no matter where they are. Is that right?
Well, that's correct. I mean, look at any major office complex. You're going to see 10 or more wireless signals in your Wi-Fi band alone. So that's not to mention all the cell phone towers, which are even higher power, and other broadcasting transmitters. So we're all bathing in it. I think, again, you have to look at it in terms of how much power, what's the power density. And, one caveat is that we've developed as human beings under a tremendous wireless radiator, and we bathe in it every day, and that's called the sun. And generally, in small amounts, it's benign, or in some cases even healthy, creates vitamin D. So it really has to do with the magnitude of the signal. And again, you're talking about logarithmic. So when you talk about wireless charging, we're talking about something that's hundreds or thousands of times higher power density. And that's why we say that it's dangerous, because it's the level that's being absorbed by human tissue in your body.
I was talking with Dr. Norman Shealy. He's a medical doctor, a researcher, a physicist, and author of 30-plus books. He's been on the radio in this marketplace, in the Springfield, Missouri marketplace, for many years. He's known worldwide. And we were talking about what is happening to the human body. Why is cancer increasing at an increasing rate? And he talks about the assault 360 degrees by chemical, biological, electronic, toxins all over the air. And do you see this increasing at an increasing rate? Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. In New York City, they're thinking about having Wi-Fi so that you can move from cell to cell to cell in Wi-Fi all over the city. And other cities are thinking about that as well. So pretty much Wi-Fi everywhere you go in the city. Do you see that kind of a rollout happening as well?
Well, it is, and also cellular. So we're looking at microtransmitters. So your actual cellular frequencies are going to be everywhere. We're making the base stations smaller and smaller and smaller. So we will be bathed in more and more RF energy. Now, the good news is the FCC does have strict power limits, and pretty much they're being adhered to. So it's not going to be thousands of times more. It might be, 5 times more or a realistic number. But yes, it's only going up.
It's only going up. Okay, and I'd like to connect a dot as to something that you said. I'm in total agreement with it. You talked about Wi-Fi, the number of Wi-Fi antennas that you can connect to or that you can see on your devices. I'll tell you what happened to me. Bert Bertonis is with us, and he's in Silicon Valley. Bert, when I travel, sometimes if I think I'm going to be delayed, I might take an old iPad with me. And I don't normally use that technology, but if I'm traveling, I think I might be broadcasting remotely. I can use an iPad, and there's wireless everywhere, except my house. And I can bring a headphone with a boom microphone, and those two things, I'm good to go. I can connect to the network, and I can broadcast remotely, and the signal's okay. So I happened to have this with me when I was traveling, and I was in the waiting room of an office complex, and I just thought, I might be here for hours waiting for someone else, so I'll just catch up on the news. And I found between 19 and 20 Wi-Fi routers that had I had the password and I could have connected to. And that's just in a small city or medium-sized city. So that's just in one location, 19 to 20 different Wi-Fi routers. So the point is, you are absolutely correct.
Well, Vince, I have a little bit of good news for your listeners.
Okay.
And this kind of ties together the whole theme of what we've been talking about. So if you have a Wi-Fi router in your office, and let's say you're standing 10 to 20 feet away from it, the actual power level you're receiving is anywhere from 30 to 50 dB down. So we're talking about 1,000 to 100,000. So the good news is we call that far field coupling. The actual amount of power you're receiving is very, very low unless you're literally right next to the router and sticking your head there. So the same reason that we say wireless charging is not effective unless you use kilowatts or megawatts of power, which would obviously be dangerous, is the good news why your actual phone or your human body is only picking up a tiny, tiny fraction of the energy from those routers. Now, in aggregate, of course, it adds up, but it's still a fairly low level. Now, can that affect people? It's sort of like X-rays. One X-ray, you're probably okay. 10 X-rays, maybe you're still okay. 1,000 X-rays, some people might be affected. So as we add more and more wireless transmitters, of course, the level is going up. But the good news is we're still talking about fairly low signal levels in almost every case.
Okay. So here's what I did. During the break, there's a website called antennasearch.com. And you can type in the street address, the city, state, and zip if you want. And you can click process, and it will tell you how many antenna towers and antennas are in your, within a few miles. So I typed in where I live, and it came up with 2 towers within a 4-mile radius of this. I typed in about 2 or 3 miles from where we are. There are 2 towers centered 2 or 3 miles from, within a 4-mile radius of where, 2 miles away from us, and 4 miles away from that, there are 2 towers and 9 antennas. Then I typed in your neck of the woods, and it took like a long time to process this.
Sure.
241 towers, 100 times more towers,
It makes it hard for us.
920 antennas. So 100 times more towers and 100 times more antennas in your neck of the woods. So class, if you'd like to do this yourself, antennasearch.com. I'll put it on the website. I'll post a link on the website, USA Prepares, and you can find out how many antennas and towers are in your neck of the woods, and you might be quite surprised. I was surprised that there were 2. I thought there were 1. I thought there was 1 where we live. So, Bert, from my understanding of this discussion, more technology is coming our way. more microwaves are coming our way. There's an attempt to charge wirelessly, which you and I both believe have some concerns, right?
Yeah, let your congressman know that the FCC needs to stay vigilant and have health standards for these devices.
And Bert, you are a radio frequency engineer. This is the kind of stuff you do. So it's not like you've just read about it. You are immersed in this 24/7. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. We developing product on the lab right now on our bench, and we see those signals you're talking about. They drive us nuts because we don't know if it's something we're generating or coming off the air.
There you go. Bert Bertonis, thanks so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you again really soon. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Ben.
much. Above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.